Tips for beating imposter syndrome. Number 1, do the work. Remind yourself of why you started in the first place and continue to do it so long as your heart is in it. Number 2, study the game. Get inspired by others who are doing it at a higher level and study their every move. Number 3, stay humble. No matter if we are at the top of our careers or just getting started, stay humble every step of the way and more opportunities will come knocking at your door. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bob Bay. Episode 75, Beating Imposter Syndrome. Keep doing the work. Have you ever found yourself waking up being fully confident with the work you do, and then other days you feel like you're not good enough? Has there ever been days you question if you are actually on the right path, or if this is just all a waste of time? Has a negative comment from someone ever made you contemplate if you should just give up? I think a large majority of us have dealt with imposter syndrome without even realizing it. In my previous experience, there's only one way to beat it: by continuously doing the work. Today, we're diving into how we can avoid imposter syndrome at all costs. And as we dive into today's podcast, let me remind you, beautiful guys and gals, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please, all that I ask, screenshot this episode, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bob-A, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, and share it out to the world and let them know what you thought of the podcast episode. It is so greatly appreciated for people out there that I see sharing it out. So thank you. Keep doing it. Keep spreading this podcast like wildfire, and we're taking over the world one episode at a time. So thank you so much. Imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? Now, I got to be honest with you guys and gals. This podcast episode is inspired by the recent podcast I did with Tyler Babin. There's a couple topics we touched on that I just, starting to dive into them on solo podcasts because it kind of just it impacted me so much talking about it and thinking about it. Imposter syndrome. It's a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Let me repeat that one more time. It is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. The key word in this definition, pattern. All patterns can be broken. We just need to take the necessary steps to do so. So look at me as an example. 5+ years in the podcast game, and I still question if I have what it takes from time to time. That's right. Come off as very confident, always going, always pushing out this podcast content. But you better believe, just like anyone else out there listening, from time to time, I question, do I actually have what it takes? Am I good enough to compete at the highest level? Do I sound like I'm full of shit when I'm speaking behind this mic? Do people actually care what the bearded man has to say? These thoughts can be the make or break of us, and if we don't learn how to take out that negativity, could ultimately stop us from doing the thing that we know deep down inside we really want to do. So what I've found to be the ultimate cure of imposter syndrome is by continuously doing the work. After I finished recording this week's podcast that just rolled out with Dr. Nicole LaPera, highly suggest you guys check it out. Incredible conversation. She's a holistic psychologist. But after we completed the podcast, I felt great and fulfilled, but I also felt like I wasn't capable of competing at the highest level. Part of me thinks that this was me subconsciously comparing myself to her, someone who has achieved a lot of success, as and comparing it to myself in the sense, it makes you go, do I actually have what it takes? And this is also somebody that 4 days later was going on to the School of Greatness, Lewis Howes podcast. Now that was also a pretty surreal moment for me because I'm like, wow, I'm at a level where I'm actually having guests come on the show that are also guests on some of the biggest shows out there, specifically Lewis Howes, who clearly inspired me to start a podcast if you've been a long-time Bearded Man follower. But there's those times when even going into something we feel confident, even during it we feel confident, but then after we're kind of questioning, Do I have what it takes? Am I actually good enough? And after playing back the episode and feeling really confident about the conversation we had, and inspired me to want to record this topic because I know that I can't be the only one out there. And just in that little moment of time where I thought about, do I actually have what it takes? Questioning myself, really contemplating. Was there 1% chance I was ever going to stop podcasting? Absolutely not. But I still had those self-doubt moments that I've learned to continuously pound away, deflect, get it out of my head. I don't want nothing to do with it. And so if I'm somebody that's gone through it, I guarantee someone out there that listened to this podcast episode has as well. So tips for beating imposter syndrome. These are what I've found to work. Number one, like I said, do the work. 3 important words I find myself repeating anytime I question myself and my own capabilities. My heart, my gut is telling me to continue to show up, put time, effort, and energy into these podcasts. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm not worried about the results, what people think, or how my progress compares to other people in the podcast space. Do I want people to enjoy my content? Do I want people to think positively? Of course. But I'm not going to let the negative side or the pessimistic side of somebody coming at me telling me, yo, Bob, hey, your podcast ain't shit, bruh. I'm not going to let that stop me because I know deep down inside, I enjoy making these podcasts. I enjoy the process of it. And then seeing people out there share it out or DM me their feedback, that gets me fired up to want to keep doing this. I trust that my time will come so long as I keep going. And the only way to see where the path will take me is by doing the work. So how do I hold myself accountable? By keeping myself extremely busy, locking in podcasts as far in advance as possible. I try to continuously have 2 to 3 weeks of podcasts in the vault so that there's always more content ready to roll out. And at the same time, I'm trying to record podcasts weeks in advance so that there isn't this limbo period where I don't have a guest. I go ghost for a couple weeks. No. The name of the game with this podcast world is consistency, and that's the name of the game with anything else that you're trying to accomplish in any industry of any craft. Consistency. So doing so by planning out, these podcasts in advance, it holds me accountable to show up and keep putting in the time into the craft, which helps me continue to do the actual work. So sometimes we just need to remind ourselves of why we started something. The why. For me, it was to create a platform to help people find their passions. That's how I originally got into the podcast game in 2016, because I was trying to find my passion and I wanted to understand how others found their passion. And while doing that at the same time, I want to help people also find their passion. But now it's evolved and it's me wanting to help people become the best versions of themselves. Yes, I still want to help people find their passions. I think that's always a continuous work in progress and something that's really important for our lives, because I feel like it's such a guiding part of our lives that helps us make decisions about whether we should or shouldn't do something, where we should spend our time or energy. But at the same time, now this next version, this wave of It's the Bearded Man podcast is so much about helping people become the best versions of themselves. So just thinking about that why, the why of why I keep doing this, the why I keep pushing podcasts and keep creating, that reignites the flame and it gets me fired up to keep going. So when in doubt, just do the work. The rest will fall into place. Number 2, study the game. Not only do I enjoy listening to podcasts for the knowledge that they share, but I also love it because I'm listening and I'm learning from some of the best in the game. A recent hack that I just learned yesterday, shout out to my roommate, Robbie Page, listening to podcasts at 1.5, 2x the speed. Now, when you start listening, you're like, are these guys sounding like chipmunks? Because it's just like quick speed. You don't understand a word, but when you really listen, you can understand the conversation. And actually, because you're listening at 1.5, 2x the speed, you can actually listen to more podcasts in a day. Now, that's what I like to call efficiency. But back to me listening to podcasts. I specifically listen to shows like On Purpose with Jay Shetty, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, The Tim Ferriss Show, because these hosts do it at the highest level. They're where I want to be someday and where I will be someday. That's not cockiness. That's confidence, ladies and gentlemen. If they are where I aspire to be, I watch their every move in the podcast space, and I keep tab of what is and isn't working for some of these big shows. I listen to how they do the intros, the outros, how they allow the space for their guests to do the talking, how they promote their show. I'm in the background just keeping tab, taking notes, trying to understand why they're doing certain things, and if they're changing it and not doing that same thing anymore, then why did they make that adjustment? So if they're where I aspire to be, I'm going to keep studying the game. But I'm not comparing myself. I'm not feeling worthless because I'm not at their level. I'm clearly just studying the game while also enjoying the content that they produce. When we study the game, when we keep ourselves busy with constantly learning, we aren't questioning our own capabilities because we're curious. We want to learn more. We never question our own abilities. We always look at, that's an area that I can improve. How can I improve? What are the steps I need to take? Maybe I got to put more time, effort, energy into improving in this aspect of my life or this skill set or whatever it might be. So doing so allows us to keep busy because we're always learning and we're always studying the game, which means we don't have time to fall for the imposter syndrome. I'm not here to say copy what others are doing in your own industry, but instead learn from them from afar. See what's working, what isn't. Is there a strategy they recently implemented and they're continuously using it? Maybe try it. The best way to get better at your craft, regardless of the industry, is testing and trying new tactics. I've said this before and I will say it many times. This podcast, the Bearded Man podcast, me, Bob A., what you're listening to is not 100% just pulled out of my brain and it's the Bearded Man podcast. It's 100% my original idea. I am the product of all the podcasts I've listened to, all the people that I'm inspired by. I'm taking little bits and pieces that I've learned from afar, and I'm incorporating and trying to use this platform in my own voice and my own angle and create what I think it's the Bearded Man podcast. But I would be lying if I said that this wasn't solely a product of many podcasts and people that I follow and study from afar. So ultimately, watch from afar. Take notes and study the game. You will learn something. It may inspire you. And you won't have any time to fall for the imposter syndrome by questioning your own abilities because you're always watching what other people are doing. You're studying the game. You're fine-tuning the craft. And you're getting better and better. And when you do that, when you stay busy, you do not have time to question your own capabilities. Number 3, stay humble. I looked this up. What does humble actually mean in the definition? I think many of us know the word humble, and we know what that means. But what's the actual definition? Know exactly your place, nothing more and nothing less. To feel that sense of humility by surpassing one's ego and sincerely taking somebody or something as is, no judgments. One more time. Know exactly your place, nothing more and nothing less. To feel that sense of humility by surpassing one's ego and sincerely taking somebody or someone as is, no judgments. Key part of this definition, no judgments. No matter if we are at the top of our careers or we are just getting started, stay humble every step of the way. The moment we let successes and wins get to our head, the quicker we are going to lose it all. What do I mean by that? Loss of opportunity because we walk around, we're like some big hot shit, or worse, we are met by imposter syndrome at some point in our future. We need to move forward with no judgments to any part of our journeys. Why? Because there's always going to be more room for improvement, more room to grow. The second we think we are perfect and the best in the business is when we're in big trouble, okay? While we're enjoying that champagne in the Hollywood Hills, not doing the work because we think, oh yeah, I made it here, got nowhere else to go, no more work to put in, nobody's going to catch up to me. Someone else is out there, and you best believe not only are they coming for the house in the hills to drink that champagne, they're going to get the house above us. So staying humble will only open up doors for more opportunities and hopefully close as many of those that open that make us question our own abilities. When you're humble and you recognize that there's always going to be more work to get done. There's always going to be more room for improvement. There's always going to be more things to get done. You're not allowing yourself to fall for that imposter syndrome because you're constantly understanding, I got more work to do. I know that, yes, I might not be the greatest. I might not be where exactly where I want to be. But I'm humble enough to know that I got to keep putting in the work. And by doing so, I hope that it allows us to not fall for the imposter syndrome. So to recap, at some point we will question if we are on the right path, if we have the necessary skills or talents to reach whatever goal we have in mind. The answer will always be yes. As long as we continue to do the work, we'll get through it. Tips for beating imposter syndrome. Number 1, do the work. Remind yourself of why you started in the first place and continue to do it so long as your heart is in it. Number 2, study the game. Get inspired by others who are doing it at a higher level and study their every move. Number 3, stay humble. No matter if we are at the top of our careers or just getting started, stay humble every step of the way and more opportunities will come knocking at your door. Ladies and gentlemen, my challenge for you beautiful guys and gals, any time you question if you have the skills, talents, remind yourself of these 3 words. Do the work. It's the best way to beat imposter syndrome. Don't question yourself. Don't question your own capabilities. Don't compare yourself to where other people are, to where you are in your journey, how many years you've put in, how many years they've put in. It does not matter. All that matters is that you continue to show up and do the work. It's the best way to beat imposter syndrome. And as long as you keep doing it, you're gonna get through it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a quick shout out to 2 pod reviews of the week. These are people that have taken the time to go over to the iTunes podcast app and leave us a review. And it is so greatly appreciated. So if you haven't done it already, make sure you go leave a review for the Bearded Man. First review is from Matt. He said, Bobby is down to earth / relatable dude. He gave it 5 stars. Shout out to you, Matt. He said, however, he is a wealth of knowledge and insight. It's tough to find a dude that radiates such intense levels of positivity. His solo pods are a great opportunity to get to know the man behind the beard. That's me, baby. And his guest episodes truly showcase Bobby's conversational skills. If you're having a tough time aligning yourself, this podcast is a great step to finding your flow. Matt. Matt, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you taking the time to leave that review. And I hope you guys and gals enjoy a mix of both these solo pods and the guest pods. I enjoy equally both of them. And it's awesome to hear someone like you, Matt, is enjoying both of them because I'm trying to provide 2 different styles of a show within one. So that's awesome to hear. And then the last review of the week is from my man, Aaron. He said, love the podcast, gave it 5 stars. Let's go. He said, I found this podcast through the Huey Mack and John Kilmer episodes, but stuck around for the rest of the content. Today is day 1 of the 100 Days of Sweat Challenge. Aaron, that is incredible. If that was day 1, then that means you're probably at just about a week right now, and I cannot wait for you to DM me when you hit 100 Days of Sweat. 1% growth per day, Aaron. I think you already know. I think you've listened to the podcast episode where I talk about completing the 100 Days of Sweat. So my advice to you is just keep chugging along. You got this. Keep your eyes on the prize. And before you know it, you're going to be at the 100 days. So that's awesome to hear. And, shout out to Matt and Aaron for leaving pod reviews of the week. Greatly, greatly appreciated. If you guys and gals enjoyed this podcast episode, you know the drill. It means so much to me. I honestly smile. I got a big old smile on my face every time some of you guys and gals are posting this to your IG story of the podcast episode that you're listening to. Share out the episode you listened to. Share out this one today. Screenshot it. Post it to your IG story. Tag me at Bob-A, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. And it's so greatly appreciated. This is how we build the Bearded Man community. You are all part of it just by listening. There are no monthly fees, no yearly prices, nothing. It's all just free bearded wisdom. And at the end of the day, any of you out there that listen to this podcast, which is you because you're listening right now, know that I greatly appreciate it. So please screenshot the episode, Post it your IG story, tag me at Bob A, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, and let's get this podcast known around the globe. You know what I'm saying? 2021 is going to be my year. It's going to be your year. It's going to be great for everybody. So thanks for tuning in. It's the Bearded Man Podcast. See ya.